right, folks, welcome back to the 17th episode of Epiq Thursdays. Delighted to have a guest this time from all the way from Florida, Miami. We've got Ben Azadi in the house, the best-selling author of many books. He is probably one of the world's leading experts in all things ketogenic diet and things around that, whether it's intermittent fasting. I will talk about mindset and how it all relates to peak performance. So for those of you that are kind of watching our show for the first time, welcome. Epiq Thursdays is your 20 minutes of weekly wisdom on what you can do to ensure that you are in that right state of physical and mental performance by getting nuggets of wisdom from the movers and shakers when it comes to health, longevity, wellness, and peak performance. And today, as I said, we're privileged to have Ben in the house with us. I'll kind of just quickly share a bit of background on what has kind of given Ben the bragging rights to what he has done, which is brilliant. He's written 3 books, all best-selling: The Perfect Health Booklet, The Intermittent Fasting Cheat Sheet, and The Power of Sleep. He's been the go-to source for intermittent fasting and ketogenic diet. He's also known as the health detective. We'll talk about that because he investigates dysfunction and educates rather than just medicates to get the body back to perform. He's the founder of Keto Kamp, which is a brand recognized in 111 countries. He runs a successful YouTube channel. We're actually kind of going pre-live before this with over 100,000 YouTube subscriptions. And his podcast, the Keto Kamp Podcast, was named one of the top 15 health podcasts. Today, I think the fun part is he's going to tell us how to live, because I've not figured the secret, so I'm kind of looking for that. The secrets to living past 120 and yet feel like a rock star. So Ben, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us all the way. I know it's like early in the morning for you, so thank you for making the time.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation, Aman. Hello, everybody. Great to be here on Epiq Thursdays. Thanks for the attention and the invitation.
Our pleasure. So Ben, I think let's begin by where you've been kind of spending a lot of time, your podcast about that, your YouTube channel about that, the whole idea of ketogenic diet. I know there's some people think it as a fad, some people think it's a dipstick you do for a week or month and then kind of go back to your normal schedule, so to say. What has made you feel that this is the diet, the protocol, the lifestyle that's kind of probably the key to living a longer life?
Yeah, all that's true, by the way. If somebody says keto is a fad, that could be true. If somebody says I'm going to do it for a month and get off of it, that could be true. So the way I look at keto is very different than how most people view it, because here's the truth. And it's kind of a secret, if you will. Keto is not a diet. Keto is a metabolic state, metabolic process that actually has been around since humans have existed, the dawn of humankind. So when somebody does say, oh, that's just a fad, Ben's teaching keto and it's going to go away in a few years. I don't think it is, because it's been around for 2.5 million years. So we know that every single one of our ancestors did ketosis. They were in and out of a state of ketosis. So what it means is we just switch our fuel source, because the human body is made up of 70 trillion cells, a lot of cells, give or take. And every cell could only choose 2 sources of fuel. Either our cells are burning sugar in the form of glucose or burning fat in the form of ketones. That's all we have. That's our only 2 options. So we know through science that when our cells are burning sugar, when we are what's called sugar burners, that's not conducive to an optimized life as an entrepreneur or just as a human being, because you have to rely on food and carbohydrates every 2 to 3 hours just to get your glucose up for your brain to function. Not a good way to live. When I was obese for most of my life, I was a sugar burner. So I compare burning sugar as a dirty fuel source, similar to like a truck that's speeding through the highway with all this smoke coming out of the exhaust pipe. That truck's not going to be healthy. All that smoke's not going to be healthy for its surrounding environment. Well, when your cells are burning glucose, it's not healthy for your cellular environment. So it's aging you faster. If you want to age faster than anybody eat every 2 to 3 hours, eat a whole bunch of carbohydrates. Now, the opposite of that, or the other option, I should say, is burning fat, producing ketones. I compare that to a Tesla, like Elon Musk, Tesla, cruising through the highway, no smoke coming out of the exhaust pipe, much cleaner for its surrounding environment. When you burn fat, it's much cleaner for your cellular environment. So when your body is burning its own fat cells, your liver, which is a soccer mom organ that does so much for us, produces ketones to fuel the brain. And guess what? The brain loves ketones, and it really helps you hyper-focus. It helps with mental clarity. It gets rid of brain fog, and it helps you take your status from dabbling with your health to dominating your health. And that's why I love keto.
Well, that's a brilliant comparison, kind of making the choice, I guess, starkly clear. Now, clearly for those who are not comfortable because they feel that, oh, their body can't handle the intermittent fasting because they kind of stay off their, sugar ride that they've been used to. So I guess there's a transition that probably needs to happen, right? And then I guess so if you're kind of, as you work with clients and you work with audiences, how do people get going? Because I know that when people are in it, they can see the benefits. But for someone who's kind of looking at it from far, you're saying, you know what, I'm used to, as you said, spending time in that inflammatory chamber of, the sugar burners, for example, versus kind of the sort of performance chamber where you kind of are having this sort of fat burning sort of engine revving. So how do you get people to see the best way to kind of transition from point A to the other point that you described?
Yeah, Aman, great question. So here is a practical way for your audience to transition into what I call the great land of ketosis. We start reducing your carbohydrates every single day, right? So if you have determined maybe you're eating 300 grams of carbohydrates a day, you could use an app, a free app to help you determine that. Then you start reducing it. You take it from 300 to 200 for the next few days, and then 200 to 150. Eventually, you want to drop your carbohydrates below 50 total grams per day. At the same time you're doing this, you want to increase your healthy protein and healthy fats. Fats like avocados, avocado oil, olive oil, pastured organic eggs, grass-fed beef if you eat beef, wild-caught fish. So start increasing your healthy fats. That's going to help satiate you. And then the protein actually helps also satiate you as well because it activates hormones that helps you feel full. So once you start doing this and you have achieved less than 50 total grams of carbs for the day, you should be in the great land of ketosis. And then the way I teach it to the members of my Keto Kamp Academy is then we have earned the badge to start doing intermittent fasting because it makes intermittent fasting that much more enjoyable and efficient when you get keto adapted first. So that's what I would recommend for your audience to do.
And I think again, if you have to geek out on the numbers, there are obviously these keto meters, which people kind of, whether they're breathing meters or kind of other urine devices. So what is sort of that sweet spot, which is like, therapeutic versus like getting into danger zone? So what's the type of level they're targeting in terms of micromolar levels?
Yeah, there's 3 ways to test ketones currently. There is the breath, like you mentioned, there's blood, like a finger prick, and then there's urine. A lot of people go for urine because the urine strips are very cheap, but the urine strips are not accurate because if your body's actually really efficient and your brain is actually really efficient at using the ketones, it's not going to show up in the urine and you're going to think, oh, I'm not in ketosis, this is not working, when you might be, but your body's just very efficient at using it, which is what we want. So let's eliminate the urine strips. I don't like that. I don't really promote that. Breath, it's hit or miss. You have to find the right meter. There's one that I use called BioSense for the first one, but I think blood is the best way to go. I use one called Keto Mojo, and you just prick your finger. Now, a lot of people are like, oh, I want to get the most ketones, the more ketones, the better. That might be true if you're epileptic and if you have some sort of, seizures and conditions like that. Yeah, you want high amounts of ketones to keep that at bay. But if you don't fall in that category, the goal is not to chase ketones. The goal is to chase results. So there is a sweet spot for blood ketones, and I think that's around 0.8 to 2.8, which is called beta hydroxybutyrate, which is the blood marker that it's going to give you. And then you also want to check your blood glucose because that's also important. The more you can control your blood glucose, the more chances you have of living to 120 years old and feeling like a rock star. Because if you have high amounts of glucose, it's going to age you faster. That's why keto is so powerful, because fat and protein does not spike glucose as much as carbohydrates. So you're keeping your glucose at bay. So I like using blood to look at those numbers. If you're somebody who loves to look at those numbers, you could do it for long term. I like to teach people to do it maybe for a month or two, kind of get familiar with it, and then they kind of have the intuition to know if they're in ketosis or not.
And so you brought, the using exogenous ketones in the mix in a sense as well. Is that like the cheat formula for people who cannot have the discipline to kind of just eat the diet and kind of just want to gulp the liquid or the powder or the supplement? Is that like healthy, A, and is that sustainable? And 3, is it effective?
Yeah, exogenous ketones, good one. I like that question a lot. I'm not a big fan of exogenous ketones. I think there's a time and place for it, but it's much better to teach your body to produce ketones endogenously. Here's when I would use exogenous ketones personally. If let's say I'm doing everything Ben's saying here. I'm dropping my carbs, but I'm not in ketosis. I'm testing my blood ketones and nothing's showing up. Maybe I would take exogenous ketones from a high quality brand for 7 days to kind of prime the pump and see if that helps me get things going. Or if I'm maybe going on a podcast like this and I want to kind of get a brain enhancement as like a neurotropic effect, I might do it. I might dabble with that. Or if I'm going to be exposed to radiation, like an airplane or X-ray, studies show it could help with that. But other than that, I would not rely on exogenous ketones. It's much better to teach your body to burn fat, because burning fat is our primal birthright. And if you're just eating more carbs, but taking exogenous ketones just to see the numbers, it's not really efficient. I don't think that's going to last.
And so if I have to kind of maybe get a sneak preview into the work that you do with your members in the academy, for example, what is the I would say the 3 to 5 things you'd want them to kind of get organized with beyond just the dietary aspects, right? Of course, there's a lifestyle. There's, as you said, it's not just like eating only, right? There's a whole bunch of things around that. So what would be 3 things then people would say, okay, here are the 3 things, 1, 2, 3, get this in place, and then you'd be far better positioned to take advantage of the benefits that a ketogenic lifestyle can offer you?
Yeah, so 3 things. Well, in the academy, I believe the Keto Kamp Academy is the world's greatest online health coaching platform. We put a lot of energy and effort and resources into there. Number 1, I would say to first focus on the fundamentals of health, like the foundation. If you were building a house and you neglect the foundation, but you start building wall after wall, you have this brand new kitchen, but the foundation is weak, what's going to happen, Aman? The house is going to fall apart wall by wall because you didn't build a solid foundation. It's the same thing with your health. So we want to build a solid foundation. So before we add the supplements, the exogenous ketones, even before we add the ketosis and the fasting, we want to lay out the framework and the foundation. So the question is, what's the foundation for health? 3 things. Number 1 is sleep. Sleep is the Swiss Army knife of health. If your sleep is crap, it doesn't matter how much keto you do and how many supplements you take, you're not going to get the results you want. You're going to age faster and you're not going to have that clear thinking. So make sure your sleep is optimized. Just to give your viewers some practical tips for sleep, you make sure your bedroom's cold and dark. The studies show 62 to 67 degrees Fahrenheit is where you get good, deep delta sleep. Dark is important because it'll help you produce more melatonin, less cortisol. And then one more sleep tip is to just take a hot shower about an hour before bed. That could help relax you and get into bed. So sleep is important. The next thing is going to be stress. We live in a time and place. We were just talking off air. We have the elections. We have a lot going on here in the US and then worldwide with the Rona, I'm going to call it. So there's a lot of stress out there. A lot of people going through a lot of challenges. And stress will knock you out of ketosis. Stress will age you. Stress will wipe out your immune system. Get this. For example, when there is a patient that is going to get a kidney transplant, right? So somebody who has a failing kidney and they're now scheduled to get a new kidney from a donor, the surgeon who's about to do the surgery will inject the patient with stress hormones like cortisol. Why? Because it wipes out their immune system so they could accept that foreign object, which is the kidney. That's what stress is doing to us. It's wiping out the immune system. So we don't want to manage stress. We want to master it. It starts with a good night of sleep. And then we have maybe a gratitude journal. We have people we surround ourselves with that are uplifting, but stress is important. And then the third thing would be movement. Movement is important because more important than exercise is movement, getting in your steps. I'm standing right now. I have a stand-up desk. So standing and walking and getting those movements, all of those are important to lay that framework, that foundation, and then anything else you do will be that much more efficient.
Got it. That's great. So let me, I guess, ask, you've been teaching about keto living for a while. In your mind, what's the next frontier, right? Obviously you've been doing a bunch, you've mastered it. You're not managing your keto, you've mastered it. And also what's next for Ben in terms of the next level?
Well, I'm gonna continue doing what I'm doing, and I love what I do, living on purpose with my purpose. So what's next is just to continuously get closer to the ultimate goal. My ultimate goal, our ultimate goal at Keto Kamp is to educate and to inspire. 1 billion people on planet Earth, to get this information to them, to let them know, hey, you're a masterpiece because you are a piece of the master, and your body is incredible. Your body can heal as long as you give it what it needs. Remove the interference, let the body heal. So it's just a matter of closing the gap between where I am today and that goal. And it's not about really hitting that goal, but it's about who I have to become, the relationships I create, and the people I help along the way. So as long as I'm closing that gap between that goal and where I am today, which Earl Nightingale calls it the progressive realization of a worthy ideal, as long as that's getting shorter and shorter and shorter, I'm happy and I'm successful. So for what's next for me is just keep doing what I'm doing. I love what I'm doing, and I just want to keep closing that gap.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, I can see that you love it for sure. I can sense the energy, even though we are thousands of miles apart. I can sense it even on the call. So brilliant. I'll just close off a couple of things. One is, before you went on air, I spoke about that I've been working a lot with flow states. How do you get people in the right flow state so they can perform? Like the ones that athletes, high performers, whether they're on stage, whether they're out in the field, whether they're climbing a mountain. So, in your experience, how does being in that state of intermittent fasting, and also aligned with that, the ketogenic diet, helps someone get into that state of high performance? I mean, are there the right neurochemicals kind of pumping in their body because they've got the dopamine going, for example, etc.? So in your experience, has that also been part of the, I guess, desired results of the overall experience?
Yeah. So keto will help because ketones help fuel the brain, which is mostly fat. So the brain loves fat. Your cells are made up of fat. The cell membranes are made up of fat. So ketosis for sure, because you're no longer on this blood sugar roller coaster. When you're not doing keto, like I said earlier, you have to rely on food every 2 to 3 hours. How is that efficient? If you want to be in a flow state, but you're like, oh, my energy levels are dropping, let me go get some snacks. Not efficient. So ketosis will be important, but then fasting is even taking it to a next level. If you're serious, if you're an entrepreneur and you want to get into a flow state, you want to freaking create massive success in your life and your business and your health, you got to utilize intermittent fasting. You just have to. Here's why, if you want to get the science behind it. When your body is in a fasted state, it starts to freak out in a sense. It starts to think, oh crap, we haven't eaten in whatever, 16, 18 hours. We are going through a famish. You see, the body does not care and not know that I could just go on my phone and hit the Uber Eats app and have a millennial knocking on my door in 30 minutes with food. We're hardwired for the old school. So it starts to actually upregulate these what's called counter-regulatory hormones. They run counter to insulin. Insulin is down because you're not eating food. So it's your body's literal way of pumping you full of energy. Why? So you could go out there and hunt and kill your next meal. But we're so blessed, most of us, to not have to do that. So we're going to use all the energy and the resources, the glucagon, the epinephrine, the cortisol, the human growth hormone that's upregulated, and we're going to use it to crush the task at hand, putting you in a flow state, right? I'm fasted right now. All I had was my coffee with a little bit of some salt and ghee. I'm going to be fasted probably until 5, 6 p.m. today. And I get the most work done. I get into this flow state when I'm fasted, because think about it. It takes massive amounts of energy and resources to eat food. The last time you had a huge meal, whether it was like Thanksgiving or Christmas, whatever it was the immediate thought after you ate a big meal, I'm ready to go get some work done? No, the immediate thought was, where's the couch? I'm going to go into a food coma. So we could use fasting as such a powerful tool to get into that flow state.
I love fasting. I mean, I'm a regular, I would say, follower of that same cult. Let's call it that. So closing word, Ben, I know the 20 minutes have flown past, just like anyone who's, I guess, with you with your knowledge. If you were to set the audience watching now or later a challenge as to, what would be something they can do for the next week or a couple of weeks or the month, if they are kind of brave enough, what would you kind of suggest that they can kind of start with, so they can, begin this journey and start feeling the impact and the difference in their lives?
I would recommend, I would challenge them to grab an index card, a blank piece of index card or a piece of paper, and write out the person, their future self, the person they'd like to become, right? So write it out in the present tense. I am, and then write out in a paragraph who you want to be, with your energy, with your health, with your business. So I would challenge you to write that down. And then the next challenge would be to keep it next to you and read it every single day, maybe several times throughout the day, because what that's going to do, it's going to activate something in your brain called the reticular activating system, which now you're going to see more opportunities. And instead of seeing challenges, instead of seeing roadblocks, you're going to see speed bumps that turn to stepping stones. So think about the reticular activation system is like when you said, oh, I want to get a new car. I want to get a red Mustang. And you go and you buy a red Mustang and you're driving around the streets and all of a sudden you see red Mustangs everywhere. And you're thinking, did everybody else buy a red Mustang just like me? No, but now you have activated the reticular activation system to see it, to have the awareness. So when you keep your goals and your future self in front of you, it's more likely for that to become a reality because there's a universal law that says whatever you feed energy to expands. So instead of feeding energy to what's not working for you, why you don't have the energy, why you don't have the health or whatever it is, let's feed energy to what we want because whatever we think about, we bring about. So I challenge your audience to write that down, keep it next to them and read it every single day.
You know, what you said, Ben, brilliant. It reminded me of what my coach said many years ago. He's like, the eyes only see and the ears only hear what the mind wants it to, right? So in that same sense, like you said, the reticular activating system, it's exactly the same thing. Brilliant. Exactly. Well, Ben, thank you very much. Extremely informative, insightful, and engaging for us to kind of listen. I've learned some things every time I kind of get into it. It's kind of a selfish way for me to learn at the same time. So I guess, this helps me also learn. But thank you again for making the time. What's the best way for people to get hold of you? I think we're going to drop the handles for your website, but I think, is it like Keto Kamp, the handle? Is that the right time to kind of go for your business and for yourself?
Yeah, I would send them to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Keto Kamp, to learn more about my work. I have almost 400 videos on there. So Keto Kamp, Kamp with the K. And thank you, Aman, for the great interview. It was great to be on the Epiq Thursday show. And you're doing great work, so keep it up.
Thank you, everyone. And everyone, thanks for watching in. Hope to see you again next week where we bring back our next guest for the next one. Take care and have a good weekend.